The beginning of 2026 is usually the most awaited moment for global music fans, especially when BTS's Jungkook name is mentioned again. After a long period full of achievements, records, and international spotlight, many predict that Jungkook will announce a major project right away, whether it's a follow-up solo album, a global collaboration, or an industry-shaking tour. But what happened was unexpected. At a time when the public is busy waiting for a new breakthrough, Jungkook chose to take a different path, a step that seemed simple on the surface but instead sparked a huge wave of discussion among fans and the media. There are no bombastic announcements, no pretentious teasers, and no promotional schedule that usually accompanies a name as big as Jungkook. The beginning of 2026, he went through with a much calmer rhythm. For some, this feels awkward. The Korean entertainment industry, especially for a star like Jungkook, rarely makes room for a long break without a clear agenda. But therein lies the surprise. Jungkook seems to be saying that his career is no longer solely controlled by market expectations or industry calendars. Korean media began to highlight this change as a signal of artistic maturity. Jungkook is no longer a young idol who must continue to prove his existence through endless productivity. He is past that phase. Previous years showed how she was able to conquer global charts, perform on the international stage, and become a symbol of the power of modern K-pop. With this capital, the beginning of 2026 is precisely a point of reflection, not acceleration. Behind this decision, many analysts see an increasingly strong personal awareness. Jungkook is known as a perfectionist, someone who does not want to release work just to meet the demands of the schedule. On several previous occasions, he has mentioned that the creative process for him is not about speed, but honesty. So while everyone waited for the new project, Jungkook chose to wait for himself. It makes room to live as a normal human being, not just a hit-making machine. The move also elicited an emotional response from fans. Instead of being disappointed, most of the army actually showed mature support. They see Jungkook's choice as a form of courage. In an industry that often demands that idols continue to perform perfectly, the decision to slow down is considered an important message about mental health and life balance. Jungkook doesn't disappear, but comes in a different way, quieter yet noticeably more real. The narrative that develops in international media is also interesting. Some outlets refer to the beginning of 2026 as a phase of quiet confidence for Jungkook. Without having to prove anything, it remains the center of attention. Every simple upload, every brief appearance, instantly becomes the subject of conversation. This shows that Jungkook's influence does not depend on how often he releases works, but rather on the meaning he builds over the years. This choice also marks a change in the dynamic between idols and the public. Jungkook seems to shift the focus from the result to the process, from the spotlight to the substance. He shows that taking a different path is not a sign of loss of direction, but rather evidence of complete control over his life and career. In this context, the beginning of 2026 is not an empty lull, but a period of preparation full of meaning. There is also speculation that Jungkook's move is related to his closeness to family and personal life. In the various narratives that develop, Jungkook is often portrayed as a figure who takes great care of his closest circle. By choosing a quieter path, he seems to want to make sure that his success does not sacrifice the basic things that have been the source of his strength. This is not a story about stepping back from the stage, but about expanding the meaning of success. Interestingly, Jungkook's decision actually sparked greater expectations for the future. When an artist as big as himself chooses silence, the public knows that something is being seriously prepared. The different paths he takes in early 2026 give the impression that his next project is not just a continuation, but an evolution. He is no longer playing in a safe zone, but is building a new foundation that may change the perception of him as a musician. In the end, the beginning of 2026 becomes a mirror of who Jungkook is today. Not just a global star, but an individual who is aware of his own limits and needs. While everyone was waiting for a new project, Jungkook learned that the greatest courage in a long career is not to keep running, but to know when to stop for a moment and choose the right direction. And precisely because of this different move feels much noisier than any announcement. The silence that Jungkook chose in early 2026 is slowly turning into a vast space of interpretation. Every day, without an official announcement, actually thickens public curiosity. Social media is filled with speculation, not about when the new album will be released, but rather about what Jungkook is actually building behind the scenes. In an industry accustomed to fast, instant-paced patterns, this attitude feels almost against the grain. And that's what makes it all the more appealing. Some observers of the Korean entertainment industry see Jungkook's decision as a reflection of a generational shift in idols. He became an example of how big stars began to renegotiate their relationship with the industry. If earlier idols had to follow the rhythm of the agency and the market, now Jungkook shows that control can be in the hands of the artist himself. It does not reject the system, but it does not completely submit to it. The beginning of 2026 became a symbol of creative freedom that is rarely seen clearly. On the other hand, this move also changes the way fans interpret Jungkook's presence. Without a new project, fans instead return to review his long journey, from the debut period to the peak of a global career. Old songs went viral again, old performances were watched again, and narratives about his hard work in the past came to the fore again. Without realizing it, Jungkook managed to create a collective reflective moment, as if the whole world was invited to stop for a moment and look back at what he had achieved. Jungkook's choice not to rush also brought up talk of quality versus quantity. In the midst of rapid releases and projects chasing each other's momentum, Jungkook seemed to assert that works born of calmness would have longer durability. It no longer competes with other artists, but rather with its own version of the past. This different path is not about looking for new sensations, but about preserving the essence. This narrative is further strengthened when some industry sources mention that Jungkook spends more time studying, exploring things outside of music, and honing his perspective as an artist. It is not impossible that the beginning of 2026 is the shaping phase, a time in which raw ideas are processed without public pressure. This is a phase that is rarely seen, but it most determines the direction of a long-term career. International reaction also showed a similar pattern. Western media did not see Jungkook's move as a setback, but rather as a sign of maturity. In many cases, the enduring global artists are those who know when to perform and when to be silent. Jungkook, in his own way, is positioning himself on that path. He does not just follow trends, but seeks to create a space in which he can breathe and develop. Interestingly, Jungkook's attitude in early 2026 also led to a discussion about the meaning of success at a young age. Having achieved almost everything that can be achieved, what is the next step? Jungkook answered that question not with a new trophy, but with a life choice. He seemed to convey that success does not always mean increasing achievement, but also keeping yourself from losing direction.